I think if people started watching those signs a lot earlier, they could see where things are going. They could either be in a better position to fix things
Right.
or say, hey, you know what? Time to say adios for both of us.
Did you push record?
Thanks for tuning back into our second act with Paige and Silka. I want to welcome Robert Manni back for another segment on love and relationships after 50. Robert, thanks for joining me again.
My pleasure. Thank you, Silka. Hi, everybody.
Good. A quick reminder, Robert is the radio host of KCAA's Guys Guy Radio and the author of The Guy's Guide to Love, a book that has been dubbed as the successor to Sex and the City, something that certainly our demographic loves. So anyway, Robert, I'm glad to have you here. Today, we want to focus on not the perhaps single people, but so you've been out there, you found love again, or you are in a long-term relationship, and things have changed. What does that say? And how do we prevent our relationship, from ending if we feel like we're at the point of great divorce? So talk to me about that change in a relationship.
Well, we all change, and when you're over 50, there's a lot of couples breaking up. It seems like a lot of women dumping their husbands or long-term lovers over the age of 50, and it's probably because people change, and there's normal, acceptable change, and things that obviously your sex life is going to shift and evolve over time, but it doesn't want to come to an abrupt stop where one person's interested and the other person is not at all. That's an issue. Money's always an issue. It's the usual issues in relationships, but what you want to watch out for is if the paths are so diverging, then that's the end of things. And if we're in it for better and worse, then we have to be mindful that we're in a partnership, but we're still two different individuals, and people are going to change. And sometimes one individual outgrows or grows in a different path. I don't want to say outgrows and leaves the other person behind. I don't think that's accurate, but maybe he's growing in a different way. I was in a long-term relationship. I started doing metaphysical work. I just was drawn to it. I learned Reiki. I learned hypnosis. I started really getting in that area. My partner was not that way. She was not like against it, but there was nothing we could talk about because I knew she didn't care about it. Ultimately, we split up. Was that a reason? I don't know, but it's one of those things where we started going in different directions. My wife, she's on the same path as I am, but it's her own path. But still, it's more simpatico, and I think that makes it easier. Opposites do attract, but if we're going to be with somebody for a long period of time, it's easier if you have some similar interests. And it's not like you want to spend 24 hours a day together necessarily. You want to be able to do your own thing, and you want to have guys need their kind of man cave time, as John Gray would even say, to kind of reboot. Right. And women need their time to reboot after work to become more in their feminine role, if you will, because that's, men are men and women are women, and it's nice that there's a difference, even though they are equal. So sorry for the long meandering answer, but that's a loaded question, and there's a lot there, and it's very easy for people to go on diverging paths, and it's over.
Right.
And it doesn't have to be that way.
Right, exactly. And what I maybe like to touch on is some of the red flags of what is like normal change and, what is it. So maybe you can get a better feel for, if your relationship is in trouble or if this is just a normal part. For example, I touched on this earlier, sex. Your sexual interest and your libido will absolutely, especially for a long-term relationship, will change.
Right.
How you deal with that and how you talk about it. And it can be good. It can get more exciting too. It doesn't have to be negative changes.
Right.
I would say the red flag is and this happened in my marriage, it just stopped. Mm-hmm. And we had separate bedrooms and we thought that was okay.
You're not the first person I've heard who says that, who has separate bedrooms or had separate bedrooms. It's actually fairly common. Listen, they don't give you a guidebook. Nobody's given out, maybe this is a book to be written, Secrets to a Successful Marriage. There's got to be a ton of books out there like that. But, there's no real guidebook as to how do you do this. So most people march into parenthood and marriage in a way where it's like play as you play, pay as you play and learn as you go. And I think what happens is the differences start to get bigger. For instance, every partnership between a man and a woman, or whatever it is, whatever it's two women or two men, doesn't matter. But if one person's more sexually interested than the other, over time, I think that many times that could get even bigger, the difference, change, where the person who's the real horn dog in the relationship continues that way or even gets more so, and the other person who is kind of like not, not that sexually interested, not disinterested, but not just as high libido.
Yeah.
And I think over time that can create an issue if you're not simpatico that way. And it's a big deal for a lot of couples. Let's face it, sex, money, and just common interests and how you deal if you have kids or whatever. These are real issues in long-term relationships. So if people aren't on the same path, it can make it really challenging. And it's very important, I think, to watch for the signals, to listen to your partner, to me, the biggest thing is always values. Make sure that you're still in sync value wise, how you look at the world. If one person's positive, the other person's negative. If one person has one attitude about money, the other person has another attitude about money. Those things can get bigger and bigger, after the age of 50. And to a certain point, you say, how many years do I have left? Do I want to just do this because we're growing further apart? Maybe it's time for a change. And it's very understandable. But I think if people started watching those signs a lot earlier, they could see where things are going. They could either be in a better position to fix things,
Right.
or say, hey, you know what? Time to say adios for both of us, the benefit of both of us.
Yeah. And it's important to talk about it, and it's so hard to talk about, especially loss of interest in sex, or if something, it's always an uncomfortable subject, but yeah, it does,
Right.
it looms out there. And I think that also what is not normal is like that total loss of empathy. You were alluding to that just now, that if you don't understand the other person anymore, or don't put yourself in the other person's shoes,
Right.
to where you just don't even want to be with them,
Right.
needing
Or-
some alone time. I'm sorry, I mean to cut you
Right.
off, but
No, 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 no.
needing some alone time is totally normal for both. I
Right.
think you said
Sure.
that as well, for men and women, but not wanting to spend any time, or
Right.
that's
Yeah. Right. But even some of the things you think are kind of small can become big. For instance, like fitness. One person's into fitness, the other one isn't. I was with a woman, and I was into fitness, and she got into fitness because I was. I mean, she was in good shape and everything, but she got into it because I was into it. But I knew that it wouldn't last because she wasn't into it the way I was into it. I like to work out. She worked out because I was working out, and she wanted, so it was like that was nice, and she looked great. But you have to want to do certain things. And then if you're in a partnership that's like that, at a certain point, one person's going to be into fitness and the other person isn't. That can become an issue because it becomes like a lifestyle thing, because then it's dietary choices. Then it's if how much you drink or whatever. And it becomes, is this workable or not? Because, I get up to run at 7 a.m. and she wants coffee and a cigarette or something like that. And that becomes like a lifestyle issue.
yeah, exactly. And that's another normal change, or not, is going through rough patches, and how you get through that. Can you talk about it and maneuver through rough patches, or
Right.
does the behavior become abusive, controlling, etc.? How does that make you feel? I mean, I'm a big believer that you don't have to stick with a relationship if it's just not working. And I also believe that you don't just throw something away. I mean, I stuck with a 25-year marriage, way longer than I should have. So
We all
it's,
do. We
yeah,
all do things like that.
yeah. But the ultimate thing is, are you happy? And can you
Right.
see yourself being happy, continuing to live like this, Robert? What would you say as a closing for this segment?
I think you have to do what's right for you. Ultimately, you live with yourself. And if you do, in your heart of hearts, if you do the best job you possibly can to make things work in your relationship, great. If they don't work ultimately, then you can say, I did everything I possibly could. And, we only have so many days, years, hours on this planet. maybe it's better for both of us to go our separate ways. But you don't want to think of it that way. Here's a way out. Okay, I've absolved myself. If you're in a committed relationship or a marriage where you've had vows or everything, you better have, in my opinion, a darn good reason to split up. That something's not working based on the vows or whatever.
Yeah.
So it's a tough decision, but to me the best thing is be an encourager. If you work out and she doesn't work out, or he works out and you don't work out, and whatever it is, make sure that you nurture the other person and make it a positive thing and say, hey, you want to go for a run, you want to go for a swim, whatever. If they don't, then they don't. Well, what are you going to do? Well, you have to determine, is that a deal breaker or not? If it's a sexual thing, hey, if it's a horny guy like myself, you don't want it to be like the wife is giving in, like, okay, I'm going to give you one, because it's like, that's no fun.
Mm-hmm.
Guys will take it, but it's like that they don't want to go into sex that way.
Right.
They want it to be like, she thinks I'm hot and can't take her hands off me, because every guy's had that in a relationship where they've had somebody who's like really, on the same rhythm as they, and that doesn't mean it's going to be the right relationship because it's highly sexual, but it's you want to be on the same wavelength.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and maybe in closing, I'll say that ultimately everything is going to change, and expect change. Don't be afraid of change. It's a matter of how you manage and handle that. That'll determine, how your relationship will progress. So, Robert, let me hold you over again, and we'll see you on our next episode of Second Act TV.
All right. Thank you, Silka.
If you haven't already done so, please be sure to subscribe to our channel. The button is right over here. Just click on through to YouTube, and when you see that little bell right next to the subscribe button, hit that too. You'll be notified every time we launch a new video. See you next time.